Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm all wrapped up and cozy. I'm having a day inside today and I'm doing some drawing for you guys. We're going to do another 10-minute Tuesday. So that's 10 minutes of sketching, 10 minutes of painting, a lot of waffle, and yeah, it's a fun one. We're going to be doing what we're doing. So this is kind of off the back of a comment somebody made, which I will talk about in a minute. And I'm going to be doing the whole of this with my left hand, apart from once when I forget. But it's hard. It's hard to remember to use the right hand and talk and think. And yeah, I didn't do right good at school. So it makes it doubly hard. It's going to be a challenging one, this. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, but we'll see. So this is the second batch of... Oops, press start. So this is the second batch of my 10-minute Tuesdays that I have recorded. And they are a lot of fun to do. Been a good response generally. I think people are quite keen on the format. It's a bit different. I've had a bit of criticism. Well, not, I don't know if it's criticism, but somebody said... They sort of inferred that it was just me showing off, really, which is obviously true. But no, it's an interesting point of view. But I think the reality is, I think kind of missed the point of this. What I'm trying to do is show the sort of opposite of showing off. What I want to do is show that the point about time drawings is it doesn't really matter how right or wrong they go. The whole point of it is it's to free you up from sort of perfectionism and really to try and deprogram you from this idea of what is a right line and kind of what is a wrong line in a way. So that's why I've decided to use my left hand today, because it's my non-dominant hand. In other words, it's pretty useless for drawing. So, well, why have I done that? Well, it's because, but it's just more of an example here of what I'm trying to show, and that's that the whole point of time drawings is to get away from that preciousness. The point of it is to have fun, just relax, make some silly marks, not get too fussed about whether those marks work or not, really, and just to have a play. People talk a lot about getting loose, and certainly I chat regularly with my patrons about the idea of looseness. One of the guys on my Patreon, Graham, who really made me laugh, is he said, well, there's looseness and then there's diarrhea. And I thought that was very funny, because obviously I have a very silly sense of humour. But it's kind of right, I think, in the way. There's, there is loose, and then there is something that is sort of abstract or just doesn't feel very accomplished. But that's not really the point in a sense. I think what often people, when they're trying to teach art, is they're trying to deprogram people to get away from this idea of what is their expectations, not only of their own skills, but of what is good or bad. And I think for me personally, one of the I'd drawn for a long time, because I worked as a designer, and I was very used to my own brand of drawing. I was very used to my own style. And it was weirdly when I discovered continuous line drawing that I suddenly started liking my line work again. And I think that was primarily because it didn't look like my artwork, if that makes sense. It looked like it was sufficiently different that it really felt like somebody else's artwork. And because it looked like somebody else's, I liked it. And that really made me realise how far removed I'd got from this sense of what I valued and what is good and what I deem to be acceptable. And that, I think, makes you realise that, you've perhaps gone on a journey where you've forgotten that the destination is not really relevant or important. The main thing you're doing it for is the journey.
Now I'm lucky enough to have travelled over most of Europe and lots of other places in the world by motorcycle. It's one of my hobbies, particularly pre-kids. I did an awful lot of motorbike touring. Then we went everywhere from the Arctic Circle to Montenegro and in lots of different places. And I hate to labour the analogy, but the reason why we did those trips was not because we wanted to go to Kota Bay or the Lofoten Islands. The reason we did those trips is because we wanted to enjoy the journey and the exploration and the camping. It was never as a form of transport because, frankly, it's not the most efficient form of transport you can have. And that's the point of this, We're here to have fun and have a play. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend if you're a bit frustrated with your work or you're trying to learn new skills, just to, say, do you know what? I'm going to start doing all my sketching with my left hand because it's a bit silly. And I am sort of trying to make a point here. But I think it is an interesting example of how we get constrained or tied up with this idea of our value. And I do often say to my, patrons and on my YouTube channel that I hate to break it to you, the bad news, but, the chances of you being the next David Hockney are pretty slim. So really you have to ask yourself, well, why are you doing it? What is the point of doing art, Now I find, you might be different, but I find for me it's a mental health thing as much as anything. I find doing art just seems to make me happy. It seems to calm me down, it sort of releases serotonin, all that goodness. And I also think as well, it's a way of finding peace with things in the sense of it kind of is what it is. We can rail our whole lives against our own sense of mortality or the fact that we don't earn more money or we haven't done X, Y or Z or we don't own this or, I'm married to that or whatever. But actually there's a great deal of pleasure in going like, this is enough, my life is enough. There's a lot to be grateful for. What I have is enough. And I think art has taught me that. This little sketch here, it doesn't have to be compared to anybody else. It doesn't have to be anybody else's sketch or have a reference or a datum that I can say, oh, that looks like that person's art, or it can just be what it is. Now, if I seem like I'm kind of overanalyzing this because it's a picture doing a wobbly picture of the Taj Mahal with my left hand, I'm in danger of gilding the lily here or rolling the turd in glitter. The reason why I'm saying this is because actually I think it's a point that is still really overlooked. And people will say, oh, I stopped doing art because I just didn't like, I had no talent or I had no skill. I used to enjoy it, but I had no skill. And you feel like saying sometimes, nobody cares. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but like nobody cares. Nobody's judging your art and saying, oh, look at them wasting their time. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to come in and go, ha ha, it's not, you're not in school. Maybe you are. But what I'm saying is actually you could just do it in the privacy of your own room, make mistakes and be very happy. So think on that anyway. So there we go. That's the Taj Mahal. The proportions are all wrong. Some of the lines are slightly wobbly, but I like it. It's going to be interesting to see how that comes together painting it. I don't know whether I should paint it with my left hand. That feels really reckless, but we'll see. Is there anything else I need to do on that? I guess not. I could put a bit more of a line around there, but it's just a wonky line, isn't it? It's all very wonky. There we go. So that's 10 minutes. Ta-da! So before I start the painting stage, I just want to talk a little bit about what I was saying, before about being loose. I think there is a real obsession with loosening up your drawing style, and I often think it's because it really suits the beginner. But the reality is it's easier to sketch very freely and very sort of loosely when you're starting, because you might not have the hand control to be very good at details, or really the, the patience and things like that. So the more you draw, the more almost weirdly disciplined you become, and less loose you. Now, I do like a tight drawing, I do like a kind of well laid out, planned, real penmanship, and I think there is a place for that. And I do think it's a skill that I can. These are just a couple of things I've picked up. This is a work in progress of Rodnard's Bay. I do like detail. I do like quite considered lines. It's easier and actually more fun to start with something which is kind of almost weirdly semi-abstract, and you can have a bit of a scratch and a play, and then develop it into more. I've just picked up a lot of pictures here. Some of these are in the rubbish pile for a reason. Yeah. And then develop it into a more finished style, into whatever style you want to go with. But I think the idea is, certainly initially, is getting people away from being too fiddly and too precious and just expressing themselves. Right, so I'm going to try and paint this with my left hand, which is going to be rather hard. So we're going to start with some primary blue up here. Oh, I've got no water. Oh, yes, I do. I forgot to bring that down. I don't really want to necessarily go over the top of these minarets. I want to try and keep those. There we go. So I'm using my deep blue watercolors here. Now, I'm an ambassador for deep blue paints, and there is a link below where you can use my discount code if you want to try them. And obviously rate them highly, because that's why I'm an ambassador for them. All right, so let's push some of this down here, and then we have a lovely pink as we get closer down to the sky. So I'm not going to be afraid of being bold with. Ooh, I've kind of made a mistake there. It doesn't matter. Let's just drop those in there. I'm using a big old mop brush here, and I'm not being precious about my painting style. I'm sort of splashing it around. There we go. Now, let's pull down a bit more of that blue down into there. There we go. Missing that bit, and I forgot about that. Okay, so the ground is quite dark. It's quite a dark blue. Not a dark blue, it's a dark colour, and that actually is quite a nice contrasting colour with that purple. So this is forest green, and because I've got such a short period with this, such a short painting time, I'm really struggling to talk and use my left hand. It seems to need extra time. Because I'm using my left hand, it's going to take me longer, I feel, to paint this. So it's going to end up being a little bit, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause there, because my 10 minutes painting time does not include hair drying. I'm going to hair dry that and then go back in again and add some more colours and things. Okay, so we're going to put a little bit of orange. Get a little bit more yellow in that on this side. Sort of exaggerate the sunset a little bit. There is some over here on this side of the dome. There's no real point in being subtle when we're doing these 10-minute things. The whole point is... Oh, I'm sketching with right hand, aren't I? So naughty. The whole point of this is to create some fun, loose, crazy little drawings. Right, so I want to try and fade that a little bit more until this darker colour. So I'll use some of that burgundy, mix a bit more, well, probably a bit more blue in there really. But anyway, this is hard. I should probably use a smaller brush because I'm so awful with my painting with my left hand. So these daubs feel a lot more like a sort of value study really, where you're just putting down some quick values and you're not necessarily that bothered about creating like a finished piece almost. Oops. So the wonderful thing about, Patreon and YouTube, and the fact there's lots of artists out there all selling their own sort of methods of art and their own way of doing things, is that there is, space for everyone. And I do like the fact that I follow lots of artists on YouTube who teach, you know, and they all have their own unique styles. So let's put in a little bit of this ground here. I feel it needs a little bit of something down there, and then this is very much a reflection of what's going on in there. Actually, I'll just put that in as one. It's not too complicated. This is just me thinking, well, sometimes you'll do a sketch like this and you actually really like it, but you just want to try and show a little bit more detail. You might want to just try and finish it a little bit more than it has been finished. But you know, sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you could just leave it how it is. Oops. Oh, that's a shame. That's the ebonite feed there. Catching, if you lay the pen down too low, it will catch on there. There you go. Well, we have to roll with that. That's one of the issues about using something like, see, it's done it again. It's quite deep on this pen, in fairness. That is quite deep there. So this is a new pen to me. So that's something I'm going to have to watch, I think. Interesting. Okay, I'll just put a tiny bit more detail in here. There we go. So I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, was it better before? Or was it better now? I don't really know. It certainly would be better without those marks there from the feed. But c'est la vie. Yes, it's interesting because if you look at the feed there and look at the feed on those two pens, you see one is an awful lot deeper than the other. Yeah, interesting. There you go. So, yeah. I mean, you could go and put some really, really super thick lines around the whole thing with this for effect, or get a bit carried away with line thicknesses. Go as big as you want, but it just get a bit silly in the end. There you go. So yeah, is that any more finished? I don't know. I don't know. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a fun 20 minutes. I know my left hand is no good. My right hand is obviously a little bit more controlled, but the point is, it doesn't matter. The point is we've created something, we've had fun.
So in life, we have to conform to expectations to a certain extent, whether it's our job or the way we bring up our kids or whatever. There's many bits of our lives where we kind of maybe want to say things or behave in a certain way, but we can't because of social norms, and that's fine. You know, that's the way that civilization and the social contract works. But your art's not like that. Your art is a place where you can just try things, be stupid, be brave, and not have any of those constraints. So that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to do these 10-minute Tuesdays. Is it's a place where I can kind of just go for it and not worry too much about whether it necessarily works or doesn't, if you know what I mean. So your art really should be a place where you can just have fun and not worry too much about not only your own expectations, but what anybody else says. You know, it's your sandpit. So go crazy. So before I go, I just want to say a real special thank you to my patrons who really do keep the lights on this channel. I do get a little bit of money from YouTube, but to be honest with you, that wouldn't justify the time and the days and days that go every month into producing these videos and talking about this stuff and planning, and you know, particularly when it's the longer series like the How to Draw series, which is 16 episodes or whatever. There's a lot of thought has to go into that, and it's really my patrons who keep the lights on. So I just want to thank you guys for continuing to support me there, and I hope you're getting stuff from it, and all feedback is always welcome. And yeah, cheers. Thank you. See you next time. Bye bye.